what do you think is to say the biggest is not fair to you, but you know, on a personal level, what do you think are some of the largest misconceptions of annuities when it comes to retirement income? Developing a plan that you sort of break it down a little bit in your book.
Well, the first, most general, most significant thing is that there's something out there called annuities in general. And if you're ever reading anything, I mean, I would speak to the public if they're listening. I mean, if you read somebody speak generally about annuities in a newspaper article, it's probably, it's probably not useful for you, because that means that the person doesn't really understand what they're talking about. It's like saying, oh, I'm taking my child to a game. We're going to go watch a game. How about that? Oh, okay. A soccer game, a baseball game, a football game. Oh no, it's a game. I mean, it's a
They're all
game.
the same.
So, so, or
They're
I'm
not on
going
the
to buy,
same way. You've never played pickleball. No, I'm kidding.
or I'm going to buy a car.
Yeah, I get
I'm
it.
going to go buy a conveyance. It's a great conveyance. I heard conveyances are great.
Conveyance.
You know,
How'd you even
and
come up with that word? Conveyance. Yeah, no,
because
I totally agree.
no, I had a Latin teacher once, and I also had a motorcycle, and he walked by me in the parking lot at school, and he talked in a very formal way, and he said,
Yeah,
"Is that your conveyance?"
conveyance.
He
He's
said,
prepping
"Yes,
you
it
for the
is."
SAT or something. No, no,
But anyway, so
I agree with you.
so
I think just that annuity, it's almost like a signal that you don't know what you're talking about if you frame it in that general
right,
term.
yes, yes, yes. It shows, because that takes you immediately down the rabbit hole. Well, tell me further. Oh, well, they're fixed and
Yeah,
deferred,
I got
fixed
it.
and immediate, fixed and variable, and immediate and deferred, and blah 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 blah. And then you're racing down the wrong chute. So at every point in the book, I tried to make it
I,
a consumer book.
I remember you said something that was interesting when I was listening to your interview or morning. So and it was like, oh yeah, and it's obvious, but when you said it, it was like, oh yeah, just legally, why is something called an annuity? Because and this goes back to that, and we were saying it earlier. Because I think another misconception is people don't really realize, no, there's actually a rider that provides the income usually, and rarely do people annuitize. You know,
Mhm.
from that standpoint. And so then it's like, well, why is it called an annuity? And it's almost like it, there's a legal reason why things are called an annuity. To be able to provide that backstop, even though you may not utilize it. You follow where I'm going with that?
Well, yes, yes. And once you start pulling on that thread, it goes on and on and on, uh, because something is what comes with the word annuity is a whole raft of characteristics. One, only life insurance companies can issue annuities. So you're going to be working with a life insurance company. Annuities are contracts, they are not investments. Annuities are insurance, they are not investments. Annuities are state regulated by the states, and can be sold by people who are licensed by states. And of course, it gets more complicated than that. But there's the general definition of annuities, as money that you get year by year. But the annuities that most people buy are not money that you get year by year. They're a kind of investment. And where we've been going over the past couple of years, as the annuities are becoming more and more investment like, as the companies that sell them become more and more investment like. So And so I establish in the book very carefully, which annuities are for investing and for certain time periods and or open ended, and then which annuities are for actually getting retirement, planning on retirement income. And the book is a bit heavy because of my prejudice towards using annuities, actual annuities, as income producing annuities. There's an emphasis on the single premium immediate annuity because I think that's the one that people need to hear more about. I think that it's a tremendously valuable product, especially in the way that you can customize it. That might be a segue into my annuity, uh, or
Yeah,
maybe we're not ready
absolutely.
for.
I do have some other questions on
Okay,
this point too, but
sure, sure. Go
I,
ahead.
I think this is touching upon, and it's something we never really have gotten into, but in terms of just like the general sales numbers, what types of annuities are actually popular in terms of selling? And that's, I think we do want to have the conversation about the single premium immediate annuity, but I
Oh,
had this
sure.
question in mind before that, but this is going to reveal that, for example, they don't have big sales numbers. So, like,
Right.
what annuities are actually popular? What are people going to be hearing about just through advertising and so forth?
Well, it's interesting that you use the word popular because when I see that word in in an article in the newspaper about annuities, I think annuities are not popular. the second thing, the second thing that I was told when I got into the annuity business was that annuities are sold, not purchased. People do not go looking for annuities. I mean, I hope if once they read the book that they will, that when they feel more agency about it, that they will look for annuities. But annuities are. Uh, I won't make any friends in the industry by saying this, but the type of annuity that is sold, the type of annuity that is created by the life insurer is dictated by the business model of the life insurer. And I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but it matters for the individual only because you have. I make the point in the book that you have to look at who's issuing the annuity and the business model, because the business model of the insurance company dictates its culture, its products, its distribution, its regulation, everything. And then if you're not looking at the company and the way it's run and its goals, then you won't understand the context of your product. The uh, and also then once you get past the company and you find out who's distributing it, who's selling it. I mean, then you have to look at, well, an insurance agent can sell indexed annuities, uh, but not variable annuities. So if you're talking to an insurance agent, and if an insurance agent gets commissions, and it is no coincidence that the most popular, quote, popular, unquote, or highly sold product is the product that pays the agents the highest commission. So that's such a like that's a blunt thing to say, but there's no way around it. There's no way accounting for the fact that, and because they tried after the financial crisis, they said, okay, we are going to really go straight. We're going to become, consumer oriented, and we're going to sell no commission annuities. Well, no commission annuities were not sold. They did not happen. Uh, they did not sell. So uh, because people have to sell them, and they're hard. And insurance is very hard to sell. And without getting esoteric, uh, insurance is an expense. It's an expense that reduces risk and expense in other parts of your life or your portfolio, but it is an expense. And so it's hard to sell. It's like selling insurance is selling prevention. in prevention, there is nothing, everyone knows, there is nothing sexy about spending on prevention. I mean, my wife and I, at one point, we were approached by one of the big termite companies, and they said, "Oh my gosh, I mean, you don't know what's lurking under there. You need a vast system of termite protection." you know and and so insurance is sold basically on fear, because there's no other way to get people to fork out money for basically nothing. You get protection, prevention. It is very important. I mean, insurance is very important. You cannot go through life. You have to say, okay, is longevity risk a bigger risk? Yes. Are annuities important? Yes. Uh, but they are a cost, and they're not, investments are not seen as a cost. And the reason that there is no cost is because you're not transferring risk to anyone, you're taking on the risk. And so to pay an insurance company for taking the risk from you, which from your point of view is prevention, is a tough sell. So to make a tough sell, they must incentivize people to do that. And wherever you land on the ethics or the dynamics of that,
So,
it's a tough job, but someone has to do it.
so then on a relative basis, to answer Wade's question, is it fair to say that the ones that have more of an insurance component or protection component are probably on a relative basis now, yes, nominally, maybe in absolute terms it's a low number anyways, but on a relative basis, the ones that have that insurance vibe are least sold. The ones that are more, investment oriented are the highest purchase. Is that a fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Okay.
because
For the reasons you mentioned earlier, it's just
yeah,
it's a hard thing to do. That kind of human nature. You're sort of
yes,
battling human nature a little bit.
that
Okay.
goes precisely to the low sales of my favorite annuities, is because
Spias.
they are pure. Uh, you may not live to 94, and if you don't, this is not going to pay off. And I try to make it clear,
Well,
because I think the
may
story
not
is
paid off
undertold.
economically, but it paid off in terms of the security while you were living. So it
Well,
really
well,
sucks if
yes,
you die like the next week. But
yes,
absent of that,
yes.
the
I,
argument is
I,
value.
I, I see from Wade's expression that he's gone over this topic in his mind and with other people a few thousand times, right?
Yeah,
Right.
it's definitely a
So
reoccurring theme.
and then your RISA, formulation helps explain why some people would and other people wouldn't be interested
Yeah.
in prevention as opposed to upside potential and risk. Uh,
Yep.
so
And
go ahead.
well, just before we get to your own kind of personal situation, I think that'd be great to end the episode. But a couple other questions that
Sure.
I hear a lot that I don't necessarily have good answers for, and I know you're more connected in that regard. So if we could cover a couple of those. One is you've written a lot about this idea of you use the term Bermuda Triangle, about this idea that private equity is really getting a big foothold in the insurance world, and the concerns and that filters through a lot of questions that come in are, is private equity going to ruin all the guarantees in these annuities? And could you comment a little bit on that particular issue?
Yeah, I guess I should give a caveat in that, I'm not a lawyer, advisor, or private equity specialist, but what's when I mentioned a few minutes ago that you have to look at the type of company that own and the business model of the company that produces your annuity, you have to look at that because it's going to determine an awful lot about the product and about your relationship to the company. And And the private equity companies, in a kind of an evolution after the financial crisis, have gone to the assistance of life insurance companies and then partnered with life insurance companies and then bought into and then in life insurance companies and then finally acquired life insurance companies so that they could sell long dated, like 10-year, 7-year, 10-year indexed annuities, which was a way for them to borrow money at relatively low rates and at low risk so that they could loan that money to companies in what's called private credit or leveraged loan or loan origination, custom loan origination models. So I was alarmed, and people I knew, some of the old timers in the insurance business and life insurance business who had been from the old days of the 1990s, we were all a little bit alarmed that the annuity buyer was now just, they didn't know that they were simply lending money to private equity companies for this to put at the service of a completely different constituency. And this is a conclusion that I've come to from watching this evolve. And I can tell you that it's when I've spoken about it. And let me go back and before jumping into the deep end of that, let me go back and say what the Bermuda Triangle is, which I've written about. The Bermuda Triangle is when a company can start with a life insurer, it can start with a private equity company, it can start with a company that's a reinsurer. The Bermuda Triangle involves issuing fixed indexed annuities, fixed rate or fixed indexed, taking in that money as a kind of receiving that money. It's called the liability for the life insurance company because they have to pay it back. And then buying reinsurance, instead of sort of insuring it yourself, which is what an insurance company would do, you move the risk to a entity in Bermuda where they can revalue the liability in such a way that it lowers the cost of the product. That's the best way of saying it. It lowers the cost of the product and creates a wider profit margin for the company. And meanwhile, there's an asset manager, the third leg of this triangle, which manages all the money and puts all the money to work in the most effective way. It invests the money. I mean, what an asset management company does, it either manages investments that other people own, or it manages its own investments, or it borrows money and to lend it in a kind of arbitrage. And so I thought, okay, no, it's in the same way that I like to deal with the principal in a transaction. I don't want to deal with a life insurance company whose motives and goals are dictated by a private equity company a Wall Street company that I don't know about. So it's the Bermuda Triangle is a Wall Street investment company, a big one. I won't name many names because they just get me into a lot of trouble that I've written about them specifically. So you have a Wall Street investment company, it manages investments. You have a life insurance company that sells annuities, which is the same as borrowing money from people for 7 to 10 years at low rates. And then you outsource the insurance function, the risk holding function, to Bermuda, where the risk costs less, driving down the price of the product. And so the big question has been, okay, well, maybe the private equity companies are doing this so they can lower the cost of the annuities and make them more valuable for the policyholder. And this possibility was brought up in a couple of recent research papers by a couple of former Federal Reserve economists who were looking at the situation. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. No, the private equity company is running this transaction. These are and these are publicly held companies. So for a publicly held company, the shareholder comes before the policyholder. So these strategies, these Bermuda strategies, which I'm and some other people are saying are not really in the interest of the policyholder, are being wildly applauded in the Wall Street press, which is the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, wildly applauded because these things are great for the shareholders of the companies because the products are more profitable. The profits, I believe, there's a problem with that because the policyholders, I do not think, are the winners in this. They are They are losers at the expense of the shareholders, and so the book doesn't go into that too deeply because that arises out of my news coverage of the insurance industry, the business of retirement.
Gotcha.
So there's a little bit of that in the book, and as it's relevant to individuals, in the
It's
section where I say you've got to look at who the company is. It makes a huge difference in the ownership structure and the business model of the insurance company. It
it
makes
it, it
it.
I was gonna say it's interesting, Kerry. You come at this annuities in an interesting way. They say, the best parents are those that not only sees the the pros of their child, but also their faults. But you love them nonetheless. Kind of thing. And it seems to me
Mhm.
with annuities, you really are in a unique position where, listen, you wrote the book Annuities for Dummies. You're a huge proponent of the role that they can play, but you're also able to separate that you're not like this sort of cheerleader, this blind cheerleader. You also see that, listen, there's some infrastructure issues that could potentially lead us astray if we don't get this right, and you're fine bringing that to light because at the end of the day the industry benefits from it, and you don't see that too much. You're not an apologist, nor are you a harsh critic, to hell in the handbasket. You're just trying. What I'm getting out of this is you're really, trying to look out for the best interest of the annuity world because of the benefits that they could potentially bring to somebody's retirement. And kudos to you for that.
Well, look, it's pretty simple. You've got a consumer who's got, say, for some people they've got $100,000, and that might be a very, very large sum for them, and they are trying to decide what to do with this money. I mean, or $500,000 or $1 million or whatever it is. I mean, this is the most important person in the transaction, and I do not want them to be in the weak position, the weak end of an asymmetric information uh, frame. And there is no I mean, it's their money.
No, no, no,
they
no.
need to
Listen,
know. They need to know exactly what's going on here.
100%. And I think that's a great segue here for your book. Going back to your book, listen, you heard from the man himself, Kerry. You hear what he's about in terms of how he feels about annuities, warts and all. And frankly, if you're going to pick up a book to sort of make you an informed consumer about annuities, no offense, Wade, annuities for dummies, it seems to be the way to go. I mean, that's just my take on that. Wade?
Yeah, yeah, and I know we're coming up on the hour, so maybe there are a couple more things we do want to make sure we cover because we may not get another chance. But another question is that we get a lot is just how do we assess this idea of, especially in the indexed annuity world, with renewal? And when it comes to the new term, the insurance company needs the flexibility to reset the caps or other parameters. And the concern is they may do so in a manner that takes more from the consumer, reduces the options budget to purchase that upside and shifts it over to the what the insurance company keeps. And it's hard, like, what is your suggestion to consumers when they're trying to understand, is this company I'm looking at likely to take advantage of me at the time of term renewals, or are they a
Mm,
company that seems to be on a more
yeah,
fair
yeah.
to their customers
Well,
who
there,
may
I've
perish?
got four, I got four responses, four separate responses to that. Uh, First is you have to understand back in the fixed annuity, the way it was explained to me by a guy named Bob McDonald, who sort of almost created the market at a place called Life USA, which he sold to Allianz back in the 90s. The fixed annuity, fixed rate annuity issuers were hurt by disintermediation. People jumped out of the contracts when there were changes in the interest rates. So the insurance companies, certain insurance companies said, "Well, how can we fix this product so that we don't lose customers?" And so they invented the index annuity. We'll index the money to the market, and we won't be exposed to so much interest rate risk, and people will not be terribly worried when interest rates go up or down. They won't get rid of their fixed annuities. So let's start indexed annuities. And then of course they ran into a problem. They, if the market changed, if they made a promise, they had 5 or 6 or 7 year or 8, 10 year products, and they couldn't, for their own sake, for their own safety, make a promise that they would have to keep for 10 years in a fast changing institutional world, financial world. So they reserved the right to change their crediting rates from year to year to protect themselves and stay in business. And so now, and renewal rates used to be a big bugaboo, because, well, what if they change my rates? And I had once talked to Cheryl Moore of Wink, the annuity marketing and information company, data company, and she said, well, if a company won't show you their renewal rates, then you shouldn't buy from them. And I thought, well, that would rule out most of the companies, and it's going to be, you're just not going to find those renewal histories. Did they change their rates from year to year last year? Have they done it? Do they have a bad track record about that? And some companies have a terrible track record about it, and it's going to be hard to find out. Uh, except when companies get sued over indexed annuities. So Cheryl said that. Well, I didn't. But what has happened, how it has evolved, is that the companies now use uh, custom indexes that are risk controlled, that have the risk volatility inside them, so that they change sort of the risk is that they use these indexes so that they don't have to change renewal rates. The indexes do the changing for them because of the algorithms built into them. So the crediting rates will change on their own because of the index they're this gets into the one of the most, this is a way too complicated part of. But the indexes in index annuities have gotten much, much more sophisticated. And let's just say that the companies have tried to solve this problem by engineering the
Yeah,
indexes.
so that the volatility stays level, so that the cost of the option stays the same, but they also have to account for the interest rate changes. But
Yes,
yeah,
and
that
then once people buy into the index, well, it's the index. It's whatever the index is. It's not like we have an index and we missed it. I mean, you get what the index gives you, and you don't have to uh, change the renewal rate because that risk is already. And so, what
yeah
you get though is you get these are these articles, these products are now so sophisticated, and the indexes are so sophisticated that you now have layers of providers. You have the provider of the index, and then you have like another layer of risk management, and then you have like the people who own the intellectual property of the secret sauce of the futures trading mechanism. And you've got an awful lot of people in the room now that are dealing with this problem. It adds expense, I think, I don't think it can help but add expense to the product. But the renewal problem has been neutralized in that way.
Although it creates another
To my
problem for
knowledge.
consumers. We suggested in past episodes to just stick to more simple indices like the S&P 500, because you can actually compare between companies and so forth. And with these proprietary indices, there's no transparency to know what the heck they're going to do in the future. So yeah, it's
No, you're gonna see way less. See that you'll never get the S&P index, the straight index in these products. At best, you'll get this S&P price index, which is
right.
the
The price,
S&P index stripped
that's what we mean. The price
of
index.
and it's only in the RILAs. I think it's in the registered index linked annuities that you will still see the simpler indexes for
we are
complex reasons.
So we're going long on the article or on the episode. We did promise your case study, so maybe in 100 words or less. How did you end up approaching the issue of your own, whether there was a need for an annuity, or what did you end up doing with your own financial plan as you approach retirement?
Well, I was concerned about longevity risks. My grandmother lived to be 100. I had long life in my family. I was certainly doing everything I could to try to live a long time, which I think is a factor for people to consider. I mean, if you're paying for Pilates and you're paying for vitamins and whatever you're doing, I mean, if you're investing that in living a long time, then maybe you should think about, investing in an annuity that will cover your expenses for being alive. So so that was one consideration, my own longevity risk. And also that I was what David Macchia calls a constrained retiree, that I could not, well, like almost everyone is constrained. I had more things I wanted to do with my money than I had money. I wanted to leave something for my kids. I wanted to live a long time, and I wanted to travel, and I had all I had a house to maintain, which is expensive, and so I was a constrained. I had more things to do with the money, so I had to think about protection. So, and I also had a spouse who had very different ideas about retirement, because her dad had a corporate job with a pension and free cars and retirement and free healthcare and all of these things. We had none of those things, and so I wanted to take some of the risk out of, and what we ended up doing. But my wife was very concerned about the risk of a single premium immediate annuity that was life only. And so what we ended up doing, long story short, is that I did something that I can't necessarily recommend to everyone, because I became very familiar with a person who I trusted who sold secondary market annuities. And I was able to get a 15% discount on the income that I needed by purchasing this term annuity for the first 10 years of retirement. And so what I decided to do, it's pretty simple. I decided to buy this term annuity, which you can get you don't have to buy in the secondary market. You can buy from any life insurance company for 10 years that would start on my retirement date, so that I did not have to worry about retiring right into a big drop in the stock market, right? Isn't that what we talk about that ad infinitum about the retirement red zone
segmentation?
So I'd been writing and reading about this for 25 years, and so it was pretty ingrained. And the stock market, was going way up because of the low interest rates. And I thought, well, this is probably going to break, right when I run retire. And so I don't want that. So a few years in advance of retirement, I bought this term annuity so that for the first 10 years of my retirement, I was not going to have to think about the starving or selling. No, not starving. That's silly. About having to sell equities in the face of the down market for income. And so, okay, let's just take that, let's worry about the other problem, living too long on the back end. And Bill Sharp, has a system that recommends that that you sort of wait and see, to whether how things go before you jump into a life contingent annuity, a deferred income annuity, or so I said, and others have written about this too. So I took that risk off I took out the retirement, the what we call the sequencer risk, and let the longevity risk wait a bit while I saw what happened with my other investments, at which point I'll probably buy some kind of life annuity that begins at the end of my term annuity. And so now you have to remember that part of this discussion, I had to do it with my spouse, because and believe me, this, that always makes things. You now have two people having to decide, and she was concerned about the life annuities starting now, and there being taking away something from the legacy goals for the kids, and et cetera, and the risk involved, because it was a risk that many people have about losing money on a life contingent annuity. So we said, okay, we'll do a term annuity, and like I said, that resolved. So the book talks about this kind of thing, of starting to look at the geography of retirement, in periods of years. You've got sequence risk at the front end, sequence risk at the front end. You've got, over spending kinds of risks in the middle, maybe, and you've got longevity risk at the end. And so
it's interesting. You were able to sort of take those sort of, let's say, life milestones that everyone goes through, and just apply them to your situation, you and your spouse's situation, and you slotted in the annuities when that kind of, when that peg fit the hole, if you will, with regards to your milestone. I think that was pretty cool. Yeah.
It was, I could do it because I've read,
Yeah.
100 books by Wade and Moshe Malevsky.
Well, I want to ask you, can I do it if I read Annuities for Dummies?
Oh, yes. My book is much more consumer oriented
then we're good.
Than theirs. I would say that what Wade has done with his books, Wade has provided advisors with exactly the kind of mathematical foundation and that they need in order to advise about retirement income.
Sure.
And they need a very different kind of foundation speaks to them before they can do this than the foundation that I provide in a consumer book. That's Wade's,
No, I got you. And that's kind of
unique is not a good word. No, that's Wade's, over the past 10 years or 15 years, that has been Wade's almost unique contribution to this field. He has done this service for advisors. And that's another part, that's a completely different part of the story from my story, but it's certainly an essential part.
Well, then I guess we'll end the episode with Wade's book.
Yes, my book and Wade's book. Buy them together and save. No.
Oh yeah, get them. We'll get them bundled on Amazon.
Save your retirement. How's that? Save your retirement. Like that.
But,
the book is, you can pre-order it on Vanguard, on Amazon, or Barnes and Noble, and other places like Goodreads. and it should start showing up in bookstores next week, in a week or two.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
Amazon shows the release date as July 20. It does also, you have the first edition is still for sale. So if anyone's looking, make sure you do find the second edition. And just a quick note that we talk about all the vocabulary with annuities. What you were referring to as a term annuity in past episodes, we were calling period certain, just
Oh, yes.
if anyone
Yes.
wasn't clear about that. But thank you so much, Kerry. It's been great having you on the show. And I hope everyone will check out the second edition of Annuities for Dummies. Thank you so
Right.
much. Take
All
care.
righty, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Kerry. Appreciate it.